Hello, and thank you for joining me. Today, we are returning to Fallout 76 to spend another 1,000 scrip with the Purveyor on 3-star ranged legendary weapons, and as always, I'll take a few moments to talk about what makes each one good, bad, or indifferent. But before we do that, I do want to take just a moment to apologize for this video coming out a day late. I had some dental work done on Friday, and I just was not up for recording this weekend, so it set me a little bit behind here. It's possible my Wednesday video could be a day late as well. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see how things go, but I should be back on my normal schedule next week. So I appreciate you bearing with me, and let's go on ahead and see what we get today. So for our first weapon, we get a Stalkers M79 grenade launcher with replenishing action points with each kill and +1 agility. So the Stalkers effect is probably the worst first star for ranged weapons in the game, in my opinion, just because I don't see where it really does anything, because I have done some testing, and even when I'm completely hidden, not in combat, using VATS, I still miss sometimes, which means it's not a 100% VATS hit chance, but I do still pay the extra action point cost. So basically getting the drawback with no benefit, so that's not a good thing. The replenishing action points with each kill, that could be very good, especially on a weapon like this where you can potentially do enough damage to, at least with squishy creatures, kill one or more, potentially even more than one creature at a time with a single shot. So, you know, it could keep your action points high while you're trying to use VATS with this weapon. It is worth noting that this is a launcher weapon, so if you're using VATS, then if you miss your shot, it's possible your projectile will just go off into nothingness and you won't get the explosion from it. Just something to be aware of. But it is also a valid way to do it if you want to get a little bit more accuracy. But this is not necessarily the best weapon for that because of the slow reload and only holding one capacity. So I would probably go on ahead and just free fire or hip fire or aim this one. The +1 agility, that's never bad. I don't think anyone's going to complain about getting some extra agility, but it doesn't really do a whole lot. It's a little bit of extra stealth, a little bit of extra action points, but just not really exciting. So overall, this one's a dud. Let's go on ahead and move on to the next one. And this one's kind of interesting. I might actually have to try this one out. We got a Vampire's Fat Man with +50% VATS hit chance and 15% faster reload. So the Vampire's effect is one of my favorite effects in the game. It's not the best effect typically on slow firing, heavy hitting weapons because the amount of damage or health that it heals is the same whether you're firing a Fat Man or an automatic pistol or whatever. So you're really much better with something that's like a shotgun where it hits with 8 pellets to trigger the Vampire's effect all in one shot, or an automatic weapon where you can just hit repeatedly with it to get that benefit. But it's never a terrible effect in my opinion. Being on a Fat Man, because it explodes, you could potentially hit a lot of targets with that, so it should theoretically trigger the Vampire's effect with every target that you hit. So it could actually be surprisingly good on this weapon. Again, I have to do some testing maybe to see, but the +50% VATS hit chance, I talked just a moment ago about how launcher weapons can have their projectiles go off into nothingness if you miss in VATS, but the +50% VATS hit chance makes your chances of missing in VATS much, much lower. So this could be interesting in that regard. And then 15% faster reload is great on pretty much every ranged weapon, and especially weapons like this where you have to reload between every shot. So I might actually play around with this one. I would never expect it to be the kind of weapon that you could run around as your main weapon, really, but I could see potentially having some fun with it if you happen to have some mini nukes in your inventory and just wanted to fire them off and see some things blow up. So that's kind of interesting. Let's go on ahead and see what else we get today. And here we've got an Assassin's Gauss pistol with 25% faster fire rate and +250 damage resistance while reloading. So the Assassin's effect, if you're not a PvP player, is one of the weaker Slayer effects because the human enemies in this game are generally pretty weak, so pretty squishy. Excuse me. So it doesn't take a whole lot of damage to put them down generally, and you can typically put them down with a non-legendary weapon pretty easily. Worth noting that there's not really a way to get a non-legendary Gauss pistol that I know of in the game because you can only craft legendary versions, but my point still stands. If you're a PvP player, then the Assassin's Effect could be very good because you're probably going to want to run around at full health because PvP is a bit more unforgiving than PvE, so this might actually be it's actually potentially a good effect for PvP players. I'm not no PvP expert by any means, but probably not the weapon you really wanted on a Gauss pistol. The 25% faster fire rate, it's not doing a whole lot on this weapon, unfortunately, because it does not help the charge time that it takes to charge up to get the full damage from the Gauss weapon. And when you're not charging it up, the Gauss weapons pretty much fire as quickly as you can pull the trigger. So, you know, we did see on Weapon Spotlight last week where with the Alien Disintegrator, the 25% faster fire rate on the powerful receiver, that's the semi-automatic version, really did make a difference in how quickly the weapon could fire. I don't believe that will be the case on this weapon. The plus 250 damage resistance while reloading, that is not necessarily a terrible thing. You know, getting some extra damage resistance while you're reloading and potentially vulnerable because of it is not terrible, but if you've already got armor that's giving you at least 300 to 400 damage resistance, then you're going to be seeing diminishing returns from it, so it's not really doing a whole lot there, and I would just much prefer to see a much better third star there. So overall, I consider this one a bit of a dud. If you're a PvP player, you may as well, you may find it useful, but even then, I don't think it's going to be exciting. So let's see what else we get today. And here we've got a suppressor short pump action shotgun with bullets exploding for area damage and your VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So the suppressor's effect is kind of an unnecessary effect in my opinion. It's not that it doesn't work. It does do what it says. It just there's not really any time in the game where I really feel like that's a true necessity. I feel like you're generally just better off trying to put your enemies down as quickly as possible. That said, if you're really interested in playing some sort of a support build, you may be interested in the suppressor's effect because it will definitely help keep your allies alive and make things easier for you. So it's like I say, kind of unexciting. The bullets exploding for area damage is definitely one of the best second stars in the game for pretty much any weapon that it can drop on. And shotguns in particular do benefit from it especially, so because each pellet from the shotgun shot triggers an explosion. So you get, it's not the full explosive damage it used to be, I believe, but it's no longer. But it's still a very powerful effect on shotguns. So that's very good. It's just extra damage. You can't complain about that. The VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. That is, it depends on your playstyle. If you are a full health VATS player, then that could be very good for you. If you're low health, then you can probably get your critical meter to where it's filling up basically every second or third shot, even without that effect. And if you're more of a aim down the sights or hip fire your weapons type of player, then it's really not going to do much of anything for you. Shotguns are very usable in VATS almost exclusively. That's the way I tend to play them, but it's definitely not the only way to play them. So anyway, this one's, if it had a better first star, it could actually be pretty good, but the first star makes it a bit disappointing. So let's see what else we get today. And here we've got an Aristocrat's short hunting rifle with plus 50% limb damage and 90% reduced weight. So this one is kind of the opposite of the last one, where the first star is really good and the second and third stars are not so good. The Aristocrat's effect is, in my opinion, probably the best, at least for late game players, first star in the game for full health builds. Because the only thing you need to do to get that extra 50% damage from the Aristocrat's effect is have 32,000 caps on your character, and you got it. If you have less caps on your character, you'll still see some bonus, but if you've got 32,000, you get that full 50%. That's potentially better than the Junkie's effect because you don't have to have any real drawbacks. You know, you don't have to have any addictions, and because you can only have so many chems affecting you at a time, you're going to be suffering some kind of drawback from having the full 5 addictions for the Junkie's effect. So that's why I think the Aristocrats effect is slightly better, at least for late game players who don't need to buy a whole lot from train stations or White Spring vendors or that sort of thing. The plus 50% limb damage, unfortunately, is a pretty unexciting effect. In my opinion, if you want to do a lot of weapon crippling, then you're going to be better off going on ahead and taking the perks that improve your chances to cripple a limb. And that's going to give you your best chance to do so. The plus 50% limb damage, I guess it could help if you really want to do that, but it's going to be better on a low damage, fast firing weapon than it is on a weapon like this. On a weapon like this, you're really trying to get those one-shot kills, and that second star is really doing nothing if you're doing what you're hoping to be doing. The 90% reduced weight, that's never a terrible effect. I mean, being able to carry more weapons around is nice. I think everybody in this game has issues with inventory management to some extent, so that's not a bad thing. On rifles, it's not really ideal because the mods that you put on the weapons do not benefit from the 90% reduced weight legendary effect, and most rifles, such as the hunting rifle here, have quite a few mods that you can put on them, so by the time you mod it out the way you want it, it's likely to have close to half the normal weight instead of, 10% of the normal weight of a weapon like that. So it's not terrible, but definitely not the best third star. So overall, not exciting. Let's go on ahead and try it again here. And here we've got a Zealot's Pipe Revolver with replenishing action points with each kill and faster movement speed while aiming. So the Zealot's effect is another one of the weaker Slayer's effects, because your typical Scorched enemy is going to go down pretty quickly even without a legendary weapon, but it does have the benefit of being able to do that extra damage to the Scorched Beasts and the Scorched Beast Queens, so at least it's got that going for it. Although I'm not sure that a Pipe Revolver is really the type of weapon you want to bring to that fight, although if you're a stealth pistol build wanting to use revolvers, then this is pretty much the only game in town. It's the only revolver in the game that you can put a suppressor on, so in a lot of ways that actually makes the Pipe Revolver the best revolver in the game, in my opinion. But, playstyles vary, so you may disagree. The replenishing action points with each kill, that's very good on a weapon like this, because if you're using any kind of a pistol, there's a good chance you're going to want to be using VATS a lot just to get some extra damage from targeting weak points and from the VATS critical hits, because pistols are a bit underpowered in this game. They can definitely still do the job, but they're not going to put out quite the damage that other weapons will. So getting some extra damage from using VATS like that is a good thing, and getting some more action points when you kill things is going to help keep you using VATS longer. So all around a good thing there. The faster movement speed while aiming, unfortunately it does not synergize with the second effect very well at all. You're basically getting one benefit or the other. There is something to be said for a versatile weapon, and I could especially see that for a newer player who doesn't have the arsenal of weapons that more experienced players tend to have in their stash boxes. But in general, I think you're better off with a weapon that matches the style of play you're going to be focusing on, and if you want to switch to a different style of play, switch your weapon. That, your opinion may vary, but that's the way I feel about it. So, anyway, this one's, it's not terrible, pretty middling, pretty unexciting, though. Let's go on ahead and see what we get next. And here we've got a Troubleshooters 50 cal machine gun with replenishing action points with each kill and plus 250 damage resistance while reloading. So the Troubleshooters effect is probably one of the better Slayer's effects, because there are quite a few times in the game when you're going to be actively hunting down robots, or at least forced to fight robots, such as when you're doing nuke runs or the encrypted event or daily ops, things like that. So you're definitely going to be seeing robots at some point in your gameplay, typically. And robots are not the squishiest enemies in the game by any means, so getting some extra damage against them for any build is nothing to complain about. The replenishing action points with each kill, I think it's a little lost on this weapon. The 50 cal is probably one of the heavy guns that you could do a little bit better using as a VATS heavy gun than a lot of other heavy guns, but even so, you're still going to burn through your AP pretty quickly, and I don't believe that second star is going to provide you enough AP to really keep you using VATS all the time like you could with a properly built commando build, for example. But I could be wrong. Might be worth doing some testing on that. But it'll definitely keep you going in VATS longer, or give you some more AP to sprint with, or, you know, however you like to use your AP. So it's a good effect, just I'm not sure it's the best second star for this weapon. And then the plus 250 damage resistance while reloading. Once again, I don't think it's a particularly good effect, and especially not on this weapon, because unlike a lot of heavy guns that use like plasma cores or fusion cores for the weapons that you really just want to run them out before you reload, this weapon, there's no drawback to reloading it when there's no enemies around, just because there's no enemies around. So you can typically enter your battles with a full magazine, and it has a very large base magazine, so the chances of you needing to do a lot of reloading during combat is pretty low if you keep an eye on that sort of thing. So kind of a lost effect on this. So overall, not terribly exciting, not the worst, but let's see what else we get here. Now, this one is unfortunately slightly disappointing. We got a Vampire's Gatling laser with 25% faster fire rate and plus 50 damage resistance while aiming. So if this was a Vampire's Ultrasight Gatling laser, this would be a very solid roll. Not a god roll by any means, but very solid. Unfortunately, it's a Gatling laser, which means its damage is lower than the Ultrasight Gatling laser, so it has that drawback. It's not a terrible roll by any means. The Vampire's effect is very good on this weapon. I mean, if you look at the fire rate of 227, which is improved by the second star, which makes it even better, then you can see that you're going to be putting out a lot of rounds very, very quickly, and each one of those rounds that connects is going to trigger the Vampire's effect, so it could keep you alive very, very easily. The 50 damage resistance while aiming, that really seems very much lost on this weapon because of the Vampire's effect. Yeah, you're probably going to be either hip firing or aiming this thing down sights, because it's going to chew through your VATS AP so quickly if you're using VATS that you're going to be forced to hip fire or aim it down sights, or just stand there and do nothing while your AP recharges. And I don't think most players like to do that, so even I, VATS junkie, like to fire my heavy guns mostly by aiming. You know, you may prefer hip firing, but I think most players use either hip firing or aiming down sights most of the time with their heavy guns. So while you are seeing some benefit there, you're going to be gaining so much health back that it's just not doing much. It'd be much better if it was faster reload, because this is the type of weapon that you will typically want to run out of shots before you reload it, because otherwise you'll end up with a whole bunch of partially charged fusion cores in your inventory, and that's not a good thing. Or if it had, say, 90% reduced weight, that's a great thing on heavy guns, because they don't typically have nearly as many mods to put on them to increase the weight of the weapon. So overall, this one is slightly disappointing, but still pretty solid. We've got 2 more rolls here. Let's see if we can get something really good. Well, this is not it. We've got the Mutant Slayer's Gauss rifle with 25% faster fire rate and faster movement speed while aiming. So the Mutant Slayer's effect, I feel like we've seen just about all the Slayer's effects today, is one of the more useful of the Slayer's effects, because there are a lot of times that you're going to be actively hunting down super mutants, just because they're very good experience. So I think most players know that if you want to grind some experience real quick, you typically head to West Tech first. So with that in mind, you know, keeping a weapon around specifically for super mutants is not a bad thing, not a bad idea by any means, because they are not the squishiest enemies in the game, much like robots in that regard. The 25% faster fire rate on the Gauss rifle, unfortunately, is not doing a whole lot for the same reasons that it's not doing a whole lot on the Gauss pistol. When you charge it up, the faster fire rate is not helping it, and when you don't charge it, you can fire it as quickly as you can pull the triggers. So it's just not going to do much for you there. The faster movement speed while aiming, if you have the speed demon mutation, then it's doing nothing for you. If you don't have the speed demon mutation, then it is doing what it says, but I still don't think that it's really going to be doing a whole lot, because I don't imagine that most players are going to be running around the battlefield while aiming down the sights. So overall, this one is mostly a dud. I could see a lower level player using it until they got their hands on something better, but really it's very unexciting. So let's see if we can get something good for our last pull here today. And we did not. We got a Mutant Gauss pistol with bashing damage increased by 50% and +1 perception. So the Mutant's effect is, it's kind of blah in my opinion. I guess you could kind of almost look at it as like the baseline effect to compare the others to, because it's very easy to do. I think most non-role-playing, non-challenge builds in the game are going to have at least 5 mutations by the time they hit late game, and you get 5% for each mutation you have, or 5% extra damage with the Mutant's effect for each mutation you have, up to a maximum of 5. So it's kind of like 25% extra damage for free, but that 25% is unexciting when you compare it to Aristocrats +50, Junkies +50, Bloodied typically +80, Anti-Armor, which doesn't really give a flat bonus, but it's very strong, at least on some weapons. So the Mutant's effect isn't terrible, but it's just kind of eh. The bashing damage increased by 50% is basically the worst second star in the game, unless it is on a minigun that you're going to put a shredder mod on. If you're going to be running around with a minigun with a shredder mod on it, the bashing damage increased by 50% legendary effect is very strong. This is not a minigun, so it sucks here. The +1 perception suffers from the same problem that the +1 agility has. It's that it's a good thing. I don't think anybody's going to complain about getting an extra point of perception, but it's just not doing a whole lot with that single point. In fact, all it really does is give you some extra VATS accuracy. So if you're not a heavy VATS user, then it's not really doing a whole lot for you at all. And even if you are, it's not a lot of extra accuracy. So this one is a bit of a dud, unfortunately. We did get that, the Mutant Slayers, what was it, oh, it was the Vampires Fat Man. That's right. We got this one. That's kind of interesting. We may see that in a Weapon Spotlight video at some point in the future, just because I want to see how it does. But anyway, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap up for today. Please remember, if you enjoyed my content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you any money. And until next time, thank you for watching.